Vegas Tale, Part 1 of 3. The last time I was in Las Vegas, Nixon was gearing up for re-election. He'd hired some plumbers to do a little work for McGovern, but as yet nobody was hip to his shenanigans. I didn't vote for Nixon, nor did I vote for McGovern. Hell, I wasn't allowed to vote for anybody. The U.S. Congress had passed the 26th Amendment to the Constitution the year before, lowering the age of universal franchise from 21 to 18, but that wouldn't affect me until Ford lost to Carter. Over 40 years later, I was returning to the scene of so many crimes, traveling alone and planning to reunite with family upon my arrival. My wife had left me 2 years prior, and my brother Joe had said, "John, come out to Vegas. Meet me there. We'll have fun, and it'll help you forget about Eileen." The last thing I wanted to do was forget Eileen, but I did want to see Joe. Eileen leaving me hadn't been her idea, and it certainly wasn't mine either. No, she left because even though she'd been taught to look both ways before crossing the street, somebody's had punched her ticket for her. She knew that red lights don't stop cars, but like most Americans, she had a tendency to go when the lights turned green. So when her personal invitation to go flipped from red to green, she went rojo to verde and vivo to muerto. The red light that told the oncoming van to stop didn't even slow them down as they fled from the police in manic fury. When she drove into the intersection of Council and Collins, she did the police a service by single-handedly stopping the fleeing banditos, but she paid the ultimate price for an inadvertent act of heroism. I'd lost my wife, lost my direction, but gained her life insurance. I'd have gladly traded every dime I owned to have her back. Joe hadn't lost just one wife, he'd lost two. Joe and Janine had married when they were fresh out of college in a lovely ceremony that celebrated the love and commitment my little brother and his blushing bride shared. Joe and Janine had loved one another with a passion that was beautifully balanced with depth and commitment, and her death from breast cancer less than 10 years later had devastated him and their young daughter Marla. Following Janine's death, he had exchanged impoverished Michigan for booming San Francisco, made good use of his skill with numbers, become a successful banker, found a new mother for his young daughter and a new wife for himself. The money that he'd made in banking was keeping wife number two warm and snug in the home the three had shared for 15 years. Sophia got the house, Marla had moved to Sacramento, and Joe found himself alone and adrift in a sea of heartache and loneliness. Bitter, middle-aged, dyed, bleached, nipped and tucked, and replete with massive piles of money but no love, he seemed intent on showing Sophia that she had made the biggest mistake of her life when she left him. Part of the plan in showing Sophia the error of his ways was for me to rendezvous in Vegas with him. We hadn't seen much of each other in the intervening years, and Joe was to meet me in Las Vegas, where we would paint the town an even deeper shade of sangre. I had spent the last 2 years living like a monk, and had no desire to leave deep, rich swaths of red paint anywhere, but I was willing to fly out from my home in Iowa to Vegas in order to see my closest brother. My only other experience with Sin City had been that family road trip back in '72 when we had piled in the car and driven west, young man, driven west. I would have loved to retrace that trip with the same crew again, but most of the folks who'd gone couldn't make it this time. I'd asked if they wanted to go, but they didn't even answer my invitation. Their lack of response wasn't rude. They couldn't answer because they'd spent all their slots and cashed in their chips. I talk to dead people a lot because so many of my loved ones fit in that category. It goes with the territory when you reach a certain age. Dead men tell no tales, nor do they talk back to me when I ask them questions. There's comfort in talking to the dead, but the day they start talking back is when the comfort transubstantiates into terror. My communication with the dead may be an everyday activity, but it's also a one-way transaction. I'd started talking to the dead in earnest when my mother died. Then the practice had solidified when I lost Eileen, and by the time Dad said his last goodnight, I was to a place where one-way communication with the dead was something I did many times a day. The worst part about being a survivor is the loneliness that being the last man standing brings. I was willing to walk to Las Vegas in order to be with Joe, but I decided that flying was my best bet. I hadn't flown since Eileen's death, and booking my own flight was something I hadn't done since the early 80s. There's this new thing called the internet, which is different than calling the airlines in order to get a ticket, but I muddled through and had all the arrangements made. Things didn't go quite as planned because of winter weather, but I eventually made it to the Hilton where Joe had booked us a double suite. After missing my connection flight in Dallas, I had texted him from the airport that I'd be late, and when my plane finally taxied to the gate in Vegas, I called him right away. Joe, John, I finally made it to Vegas. Where are you? John, glad you made it. Where are you? I'm at the airport. Are you going to pick me up? I'd love to, buddy, but I'm out with a friend that I just met. Why don't you catch a cab to the hotel, and there are some tickets to the 7 o'clock Cirque du Soleil show, COD, MGM waiting for you. We were going to go together, but I gave up when you were so late. I'm tied up now, so I can't make the show, but you should grab the tickets and go. I was stunned. What are you talking about? I don't even know where the hotel is, and why would I want to go to a show without you? Whoa, easy, partner. I didn't know when you'd finally touch down, and I met a little honey at one of the hotel lounges while I was waiting for you. We're out on the town, and I can't just abandon her, can I? Take a taxi to the hotel, and we'll hook up later. Really? Tired, confused, and frustrated by the latest turn of events, I didn't argue with Joe, but got the address for the Hilton along with the information that the hotel was close to Circus and the Stratosphere, 2 pieces of information that were meaningless to me. Okay, I'm sure I'll get there. Talk to you later. Hoping to reconnect with my brother in a meaningful way, I was angry with him instead. This was not the beginning to our reunion that I had imagined.